And then all of a sudden, I decided not to do that anymore. And I went to business college. I went 4 weeks to business college and learned shorthand and went to work in the Merchants National Bank on 3rd and Washington.
How old were you then?
Well, by that time I was going on to 17, going on to 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So then, well, to 17 and a half about. And right away they put me at a desk, one desk, and there's no more ear trumpet or anything like that, but answered all the calls. And each man has his own business. In the bank, you know, you go to your bank for your money, I go to my bank for my money. In the banks, the same as you do now, see? And then I'm at the desk where I have a buzzer that somebody wants Mr. So-and-so at book 3, or at basket 3, or whatever you call it, and everything. And so I worked there until I was about 19 and a half years old, and I started to go with my husband. And from there on, I was married over at St. Patrick's, 1909 over at St. Patrick's Church there. And then we lived over there for a long time. We finally moved over here and everything. So boy, it's a long story. Mary Jane, Ann, Francis, the whole bunch, all your cousins, one right after the other, all landed from heaven. And you lived on to get to know them all. Aren't you proud of all of them?
Sure.
Well, they're nobody like them. Nobody in the world like my 8 children. Beautiful, good, nice, darling people, every one of them. A man in Bend, Oregon.
Who did? San Francisco?
And it was cattle.
Yeah.
It was cattle that they was after, because that's where all the cattle deal began, in Bend, Oregon. Well, Lord, it's 100 years ago now. But I was 19, 20 years old. And you know what my age is now and everything. And I had that San Francisco board. So this man in San Francisco, which I had he wished to speak to so-and-so in Bend, Oregon. So I block him, and then I get to the line that gets to Bend, and I get him, and I wish to speak to Mr. So-and-so in Bend, Oregon. And finally, this is Bill Bend, or this has been Joe, whatever it is. And then I connect them, but I'm listening, see, because I'm on that board. And I'm listening, and the man in San Francisco is trying to buy cattle from the man in Bend, see? And there was hardly a railroad track at that time. So I think there were maybe 4 calls, maybe 4 days, maybe 3.5 right now, I can't be too sure, of when the man called from San Francisco wished to speak to Bend.
The same guy?
And then because he decided it was too much money, and the man in Bend said, well, the hell with you. And I had to go back and he says, the hell with you, because he didn't want to, and I was so ashamed the blood was running out of me.
I mean, the guy in Bend told you to say that?
I'm repeating.
No.
What the man in the Bend says, to hell with you. That's what the price is going to be. But it ends up, and by the time they get their medal, and I'm switching from San Francisco to Bend with my different and shutting this off, and when I think of it, and I considered myself a dummy since I was born. I still can't add 2 and 2. But boy, oh boy, I had that San Francisco board, and what I'm telling you is the honest God's truth. I learned it just like that.
What happened when the big earthquake came?
And it just happens. And then we did have an earthquake. And of course, we didn't get San Francisco for about 3 days. But we finally got San Francisco back on the line again. But in the end, the deal of the San Francisco man wanting to buy cattle from Bend went through, and then that's the end of that story. There's no more of that talk, because those men settled each other when they buy the cattle, when it would be shipped. And there was very, very few railroad trains, even at that time, to carry from San Francisco, from Bend, Oregon. In fact, Bend, Oregon was about one of the towns that even had any kind of a railroad track at all in Bend, because it was one of the last towns of Oregon, you know.
Didn't you used to take the railroad up to Columbia with your grandfather on the
Oh,
steamboat, or what?
Oh,
What was that?
yes. Oh, yes.
Your grandfather worked the steamboat, or who worked the steamboat?
Well, that was just a relative.
Oh,
A relative, and we could go and sit beside him in the room with where the steerer was and everything.
well, he was the captain or
But
something?
we never made any much. We didn't think it was great. But
Well, where did the steamboat go?
to Cascade Locks,
Oh,
Portland, Oregon. Right from downtown here up the Columbia River to Cascade Locks, and we'd be gone all day. See, we'd be gone all day, and we'd take our lunch, and the ship was loaded. It was an old wooden treat, a boat, and it was loaded with people. You know what I mean? And we had our lunch, or we could buy lunch on the boat all the way up, and we'd run all around. Oh yeah, I went many, many times. My dad and mother took us. We went for a whole day. We're going all day up the Columbia River to Cascade Locks. So, no matter what you dealt with, everything came in tons. And you know, you had to know how to figure. You had to know how to add. You had to know how to subtract. And I don't think Grandpa ever graduated from school, but he was smart. He could figure anything. That was your grandfather. And night after night he'd come home and he'd be at that table for 2 hours. Be sure in adding and subtracting. And it'd be, it wasn't a lot of food. Lots of time it was all bunches of lumber.
what did he do? What was his job?
Well, he was a supervisor of that part of the department.
Loaded the boats or what?
Well, on the boat. No, he never lived on the boat.
No, he loaded them,
But
didn't
the
he?
boat had to be
Yeah.
loaded in Portland and unloaded in the Dalles. And sometimes he'd have to go to the Dalles, but of course he'd always get a ride later. But not very often, because when he loaded the ship from here, that was his job. That was it. And then it got to be lading railroad tracks, and it was the same thing. So that's the kind of work he did, see. So there, that was the end of it. Till
What-
finally the ships never had come up to Portland because the river wasn't wide enough. They'd come far as St. Helens down there. You know where St. Helens
Mhm.
is? Down the road here. You'd go down maybe about 40 miles from here, and that's the little town of St. Helens. Right on down the river there, see? And that's as far as any boats came. They could come up the Columbia River and then shoot right off to that town, and that's as far as up the Columbia River. So Dad'd have to go down there on the boat, on another boat, to be down there to unload that wheat or whatever came from here, or from what was here was going to be shipped down to San Francisco again. So he did that for years.